Hello and welcome to a new video. So in today's video I'm going to be potentially committing to another case study for a book that I'm going to be showing off on my channel, just like I did with one a couple of weeks ago. And also in this video, this is going to give me the chance to talk about why I don't think certain niches are going to be suitable for everyone to pursue, and also why I'm not scared of publishing in typically saturated niches. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But if you're new to the channel, my name is Chris. I've been self-publishing online for around 10 years and I'm here to share that experience with you. So if you're not familiar with what I mean by a case study, what I'm saying is that I will create a book the way that I usually would, upload it onto Amazon for everyone to see, and then explain what went into creating and marketing that book. So I did this a couple of weeks ago with a book, and that book is currently sat on 72 sales. It hit a low of around 36,000 on the BSR, which is a pretty good start. But what I wanted to do was to create another case study in a different niche, since the approach won't be the same as the last one, and go into much more detail with it. So I feel like creating these kind of case study videos is better than just continually trying to explain how I think you can make sales on KDP. And over the last year and a half of doing this, I've come to realize that no matter how much talk there is, no matter how much detail anyone goes into, it's never going to be the same as just showing. And I genuinely believe that this is going to be the next step in terms of setting people on a better publishing path. And I already know that there's this kind of missing piece feeling that people get when it comes to watching YouTube channels about publishing, because ultimately it's all just talk. So hopefully, like I say, this is going to be the next step for filling in those gaps. And without sounding harsh, over the last year and a half of doing this and talking to a lot of people, a fair few people have sent me their book listings, and I would say about 80% of them are extremely bad. And I think to myself, is this what I've been telling people to do? Is this how is this how I'm being interpreted? Or is this what the information out there on YouTube is prompting people to create? Which is a shame, because if you don't approach your books in a certain way, then you're going to continue to bang your head against that wall and make no sales. So I understand that we will have to start somewhere. I'm not saying my books are perfect either. I'm still trying to get better at creating books myself, but you have to strive to reach a certain level, which is why I think these case studies are such a good idea. And for future reference, I'd love to make more of these. I'd love to branch out and do things like writing my own children's storybooks and having them illustrated properly, and doing case studies on books like that as well. That would be more exciting for me personally, but I think that's one for the future, because I really don't know how I would market a storybook for kids. I don't even know if I'm good enough to write that type of thing. And I'd also even love to try notebooks as well, because honestly, I have no idea how people make them sell. I assume it comes down to mass volume and luck, but yeah, it'd be quite an interesting project to do. And like I say, since every niche is going to have a different approach, this is going to be different to the last case study that I did. So I have to pick something to go with, and I went with coloring books because I have some experience here. And I know that a lot of people are interested in these type of books. They're obviously super popular on Amazon. They're obviously always going to be. And obviously that is a very broad niche and very competitive one at that as well. So with making sales on KDP, you either have to find, in my opinion, you either have to find those kind of like really hidden niches that have no competition, or you learn to compete in competitive niches. But honestly, no one is going to share with you any actual untapped niches to the point where they become tapped, right? So that leaves the saturated niches, and they're not as hard to make sales in as you may think, because this comes down to, again, in my opinion, how you position your book in that niche and the overall book quality, which again is something I would of course discuss in the case study. And I already know what some people watching this are thinking. They're thinking, why coloring books? Isn't Amazon completely flooded and saturated with coloring books? And yeah, like, you're right, there are a ton. There's a crazy amount of coloring books on Amazon, and there's a crazy amount of pretty much every type of book on Amazon. So Amazon has been mega competitive for a long time. It always will be. A platform that allows anyone to upload a gazillion books a month will obviously be competitive. So it's funny, people talk about 2018, 2019 being this sort of golden period where you could publish anything and make sales. I don't think that's true. I uploaded like 300 low content books during that period and made nothing from them because they were shit. It was only until I stopped producing books in volume back at the end of 2019 into 2022 now that I started seeing good sales. And pretty much all of these sales come from typically saturated niches. So for the most part, in my opinion, shit books don't sell regardless of the year. If you want to talk about a time where you could sell pretty much anything, let's go back to 2011, 2012 and do ebooks. Like, that was easy, but we can't, so who cares? But now with KDP, there is way more competition. That's a fact. But the other fact here is that you will pretty much always only be competing against the other good books, which is obviously a smaller percentage. So with coloring books, if 500 people are uploading 50 coloring books a day, or whatever number is, that's obviously wrong. It's never going to be a case of all those books just instantly get shoved onto the front pages of their niche and destroy and flood those niches, and you just have to wade through the bad books to find the good stuff, while some dude who's been bulk uploading Canva images onto KDP takes over the front pages of Amazon and dominates it. Amazon is a multi whatever zillion billion dillion whatever company, and their algorithm is never going to let poor quality books that customers don't want flood their platform and make them no money. It's, you know, it's kind of tiring to hear people keep falling back on the whole Amazon is saturated thing just because more people know about the platform existing and more people are uploading books onto it. So that is a perspective that obviously makes sense. The more people that are uploading books, the more competition that there's going to be. But in reality, and in terms of how Amazon operates, it's not correct in my opinion, and that's why I've never really cared about how many books get uploaded onto Amazon, because most of them are bad. I don't care about competition, I don't care about numbers. I care about what you upload, hence the channel existing, and hence this case study. And if all the books that were getting uploaded onto Amazon were of high quality, then yeah, I'd probably quit publishing if that was the case. But it never will be. The vast majority of books are going to get filtered out by Amazon to their deepest, darkest portions of their website, never to be seen again. Because if your book doesn't convert, i.e. make sales, then you could say goodbye to it basically. So in terms of this case study and coloring books or whatever niche in general, I can't sit here and lie and say that if you're making average coloring books using Canva and you don't have money to invest into this and you just want to thoughtlessly throw books on Amazon and hope for the best, I can't sit here and say that's a good pursuit, because I just don't think it is. I know some people will see some results from doing this, but for the most part, for most of us, I think that's going to be a dead end. The way that we want to do things is to make sure our books stick in the marketplace for years to come. Yes, years. Okay, so just to come back to something quickly here to make a point, I was randomly typing Raydog coloring book into Amazon and I came across this book here by Mike Raydog. And while I know it's not exactly nice to pick on people's books and use them as examples, this is what you're competing against. Amazon is flooded with books like this. There are a lot of books like this being uploaded onto Amazon every single day. So if I had to pick an example of a book where the publisher was doing pretty much everything wrong, it would be this book. First off, this is one of the reasons why I believe that passion projects aren't all that they're made out to be, because, you know, it's something like a badminton quotes coloring book that has to be created by someone that's interested in badminton, otherwise it's the most random book to have made ever. And like I say, this is why I don't necessarily believe in anyone that says just follow your passion and you'll make sales. I don't believe that. What we're doing is we're going by what is selling on Amazon. What Amazon is telling us is selling, hence why we do niche research. So if we come across to Amazon and we search for badminton quotes coloring book, we can see that the search results are incredibly low. So some people might be thinking, well, that's great because there's no competition. There's no competition because people don't want this book. People aren't searching for badminton quotes coloring books, and they're probably not even searching for badminton coloring books either. And if you were to do some research on this, if this person did some research into the niche, they'd very quickly be able to see that no one is buying badminton quotes or badminton coloring books. So that's one of the first things this person's done wrong, is to follow their passion regardless of what Amazon is telling them. So no matter how good a book looks in a niche like this where people aren't looking to buy books in it, I don't think it will make sales. And second to that, the book doesn't look good either. Like this, to me, this doesn't look like a coloring book, badminton quotes coloring book for adults. Like this, I can already tell this has been made in Canva because I recognize the font that's being used here. So customers, when they're looking for coloring books, or any book, but coloring books in particular, they associate the quality of your book cover with the overall product, which they definitely do. People do judge books by its cover, and coloring books especially. So when someone looks at this
and they can't tell that this is a coloring book or even a good one, it doesn't give them any confidence into what they're buying. So this person, in my opinion, I'm sorry, Mike Raydog brother, but you're doing everything wrong here. And I can tell you now this book isn't going to make any sales. And I can also tell you that Amazon has infinite room on its store going that way, which is where this book is heading, along with thousands of other similar books. So whenever you worry about competition, saturation, just know that you really aren't competing with as many books as you think. And if these books do somehow pop up on the front pages for a competitive term, they won't last there long, because they won't convert the customers' views into sales. Amazon's going to see that, and then that listing will go that way and never be seen again. So if you're going into this with the attitude that competition makes things impossible and pointless, then I suggest that you don't try and work online. You do something more comfortable, like working for someone else. And I mean that in the nicest way possible, because KDP, Etsy, merch, FBA, YouTube, whatever it is, anything you do online is going to be ultra competitive. And if you're not willing to do something different, do something better, do something creative, learn something new, risk losing money, risk losing time, then it's not going to be for you. But if you can go into this accepting all of those factors, then you've already increased your chances of becoming a successful publisher. And I can comfortably tell you that this isn't for people who are quitters, complainers, and doubters, and all those things. So what I hope for these case studies is that it will minimize those risks for you massively and set you on the fantastic path that can be independent publishing. Because all doom and gloom aside, you can create an income through KDP for years to come, and that's a fact, and I'm going to show you. So what I'd love for you to do in the comments is to kind of have a vote amongst yourselves as to which sub needs to go for here, and we need to make it something that is considered competitive or saturated or whatever. That's the point of the case study, is to be able to make sales in competitive niches that have lots of buyer traffic going to them. So I'm going to scroll through Amazon in just a second and put some suggestions out there for you. But if someone comments a niche that you want to see a book made in, make sure that you like their comment or leave your own. And also, if anybody says unicorn coloring books, then I'm going to find a way to get them banned from YouTube. So again, the other point of this case study is that when you enter into a niche, that you don't just do what everyone else is doing. You don't just copy me. You don't settle for the bare minimum. And ultimately, when you do things this way, you'll find that you won't have to create a gazillion books a month and start slowly edging yourself away from that feeling of trying to quickly produce books just to make money, just because someone's told you that notebooks were a great way to make a passive income. And it's kind of cliche, but the more passion and thought that you put into your projects, the more that you can enjoy them, the more that you have an understanding of the niche, and ultimately you'll be increasing your chances of making sales that way. And also, once you start doing things this way, you'll find even if your next project isn't one that makes you sales, you'll find that the book that you create after that, you'll know what you need to do in terms of making your book better. So every book that you upload after adopting this new attitude, you'll be increasing your chances of making sales with every book that you upload from there. So the question is, how are we going to go about doing this? I had in mind to make this my YouTube project for the next X amount of weeks and just add videos as and when I get things done, or just to make this into one kind of case study members area type of thing. I don't know yet, because I need to know that there's enough interest in it before I actually go through it. So if you are interested, please express your interest in the comments below by saying something, whatever. So one issue with this here is that, you know, in terms of being transparent here, I will be spending money on the project, so hiring an illustrator and running ads to the book. So I know what my budget for pretty much everything is before I start, but I am aware that some people don't have that type of budget to work with. Now, the colder side of me is tempted to say, well, that's too bad, and you're going to have a very hard time creating a quality book if you don't have any money to invest and you don't have any skills either. But also, my attitude toward KDP has always been that it is for everyone, regardless of their location, skill, budget, and for better or worse, that's a fact. But honestly, some niches I don't think are suitable for some people that want to take a cheap or free route. So in my Facebook group here, my good friend Niaz writes, that would be great if you could show the whole process from start to finish. Yes, I can do that. Even how to go about free promotions as part of a series. Not quite sure what that means. Emphasize for non-artists who cannot draw them, and from where they can gather elements safely, both free and paid, and how to put them together to make a unique coloring book. The cover designing will also be a nice addition. Yes, I can go into the cover elements of things. So let's talk very quickly about the free and paid way of putting together coloring books. So this is a hard one for me because I would find it very hard to recommend something that I'm not actively doing. So like I say, I will be hiring someone to do the interiors for me. In terms of putting coloring books together using free elements or paying for like coloring packs is something that I would never really recommend. My immediate thought here is that when it comes to going what I assume is meant to be a cheaper route, is that when it comes to picking your coloring book niche, you go for something really simplistic and have someone design that for you. So children's books or books for seniors are typically not very complex, so it would cost you less to have made. And I think if I did a case study for this book, I would happily include suggestions for niches that you can either give a go at designing yourself or have outsourced for a lower price. So in terms of free minus being able to do this yourself, I really don't think that this is a $0 game, I'm afraid. Like, standards for coloring books are really high, and I don't know what free pursuit can result in a quality to match those standards that are also ethical. I know some people are pretty crazy and they do things like they'll take actual images from places, then they'll hollow them out using software, and then, you know, to the point where it just like leaves an outline, and then they use them for their pages. But for me, it's terrible. Like, it looks atrocious. I'd never recommend it, and I've never seen anyone produce a good coloring book from using those methods. And then there's Creative Fabrica, but again, it's not something I've done, it's not something I'm familiar with, like in terms of the licensing and those sorts of things. So it's not something I can really talk about, but I am open to people giving suggestions as to how to create a coloring book for a cheaper price. But for me, I like to hire one designer to do everything, and I like those designs to not exist anywhere else online. That's just how I want my books to be, because it creates that type of uniform feel that you don't usually get if you're just taking a cheaper route. So I think it's safer here for me to say that if I just go ahead and showcase my own pursuits and not make suggestions and leave the content creation down to you if you're not willing to pay for a designer. There are other videos on YouTube that will probably show you cheaper routes, and I don't think it would be fair of me to make suggestions when I'm not actively doing that myself. So the point of the case study is to show you what I'm doing. But you know, when it comes to hiring a designer for simple designs, then yeah, you don't need to break the bank. But again, I can't possibly tell you what your budget would have to be, because there are going to be too many variables. And I actually think this would make for a really interesting section of the case study, which is hiring a freelancer, because it can be somewhat of a nightmare, and there are a lot of things that you need to look out for so that you don't get scammed. So ramblings aside here, the takeaway from this would be to do it yourself or hire someone to do it for you, basically. And I know it is everyone's right to upload pretty much whatever they want onto KDP, but honestly, a lot of these ultra cheap and free routes will just waste your time. Like, I've known people to upload 300 to 400 coloring books a month, like every month, and not make any sales. And for me, wasting time like that is way worse than wasting money. So I think if you really have nothing to put into this, then possibly reconsider the niche. And you know, just because you've seen some clown on YouTube put a coloring book together in 5 minutes, it doesn't mean you should. And that's the case for most niches. Just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. But again, on the flip side, you really don't need a crazy amount of money to invest into interiors and running ads. And also regarding ads, there is this pretty stupid notion that you have to spend literal thousands of dollars to make publishing worthwhile. Yes, some people obviously operate that way, but for those of us on a lesser budget, we're going to be using our ads to get our books ranked higher on Amazon and not to make a direct profit. So with the last case study that I did, I think I spent, you know, maybe $35 to $40 on ad spend to get my book ranked higher for certain keywords. So what I'm saying here after all this is that if you're concerned about the amount of money that you're spending, there will be, I'm hesitant to say cheaper, but yes, there will be cheaper ways that you can do this. I'm just not willing to recommend ways that I don't believe in. And you know, regardless of that, regardless of how you create your content, there's going to be a boatload of information, other information that goes into the case study. So no matter what your approach is going to be, there's going to be a load of information there that's going to help you out anyway. So I'm just going to scroll through Amazon here for some ideas. Let's just search for the broad term, which is obviously coloring books. So pretty much all of these on the first few pages are going to be heavily competitive. So if you see something that interests you, something that looks fun and saturated, then comment as and when you see it. So let's just scroll through Amazon here. Do not say unicorn coloring book, because I'm not going to do it. I would do it actually if enough people said it. I would do it. But yeah, so we have cute animals, mermaid coloring books I'd be willing to do. Anxiety and stress coloring books were quite popular on the Facebook post. I'd be willing to do them. I'm not willing to do the kawaii stuff, or kawaii, however it's pronounced. I don't know why, I don't like it. Okay, also the stoner stuff I'm not willing to do, because you won't be able to run ads to those type of books. Again, anxiety and stress is something I would be willing to do. Mermaid, I would reluctantly do that. Animal coloring books, swear coloring books, flower coloring books, reverse coloring books is something I'm not willing to do. I saw this earlier actually. This is like a mental health coloring book, and the images inside this book are just fantastic. I would be willing to do it. It's something that I feel passionate about. I don't know how people would feel about me producing a book like that, but it's just a very cool book that I saw. Again, swear word coloring book, I guess I'd be willing to do it. The fairy fantasy type of book, I'd be willing to do that. Cute animals, I'd be willing to do that. Motivational book, I'd be willing to do that. Flowers, I'd be willing to do that. This was one that I was interested in the most that I saw, was the type of whole fantasy horror type of things. Now these type of illustrations would probably cost a fair bit to have made, but I would be willing to do that. Mandalas I'm not willing to do. I just again, anxiety stuff, I'll be willing to do that. My first coloring book and things like that I'm not willing to do. Anatomy coloring book I would be willing to do that, I guess. Baby animals I would be willing to do. Flowers I'd be willing to do. Stress release, yes. Dog coloring book, I guess I'd be willing to do that. This is a fantastic book cover, by the way, just saying. Sea creatures is something I'd be willing to do. Stress relief, yes, I'd be willing to do that. Home interiors, yes, I'd be willing to do that. Butterflies, yes, I would be definitely willing to do that. Cute animals, I'd be willing to do that. Floral stuff, I'd be willing to do that. I would have been willing to do a summer coloring book, but it's obviously going to be too late for me to do that. Obviously trademark stuff I am not going to go anywhere near. Cute frogs coloring book, I'd be willing to do that. Large print coloring books, I would be willing to do that. Dinosaur coloring books, that would be hard, but I'd be willing to do that. Tattoo coloring books, that's not something I'd be willing to do. These kind of simple coloring books, like yes, I would be willing to do these, and I think that would be good. Because like I say, people with a lesser budget would be able to pursue these as well. I mean, it's just, I don't know, I don't get it, like how people can get away, independent publishers uploading Pokemon coloring books, or I don't know. Landscape coloring books, again, dinosaur coloring books. Toddler coloring books is something I just don't think I could do. I've tried it and I find it very hard to know how to target the audience correctly, so I don't think I'd be willing to do that. Again, like these dark horror fantasy ones are really awesome. Like I say, it would take a while to have it made, but I'd be willing to do it. Monster trucks, I'd be willing to do them. Gary. Bird colouring books, I'd be willing to do that. Fashion colouring books is something I'd be willing to do. Wedding colouring books, yes, that's something I'm willing to do. Bible colouring book is not something that I'm willing to do, unfortunately. And then, like I say, we have all these sort of simple, relaxing colouring books for adults and seniors. Again, this is something I think would be a good idea, because they would cost less to have made. But that's just a few that we can look at there. If you have any suggestions, like I say, make sure that you leave them in the comments below. And like I say, if there's enough interest, if there's enough suggestions out there, then I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to keep you updated as and when I decide how I'm going to do this as well. So what I would suggest that you do is to go to the description and sign up to my free ads course. So once you sign up to the ads course, you're going to get added to my email list, where I can then keep you updated with what's going on with this case study. So the things that I'd like to actually cover inside this case study, once we've decided on the niche, is how I went about finding that niche, or niching down, or whatever you want to call it, adding value to your book, positioning your book on Amazon, creating your titles and your listing, running ads to your book for getting ranked with multiple keywords, pricing strategies, etc, etc. Okay, so it might seem like a lot to consider, but really over time these things are going to become like a second nature to you, and you'll actually start thinking a little bit more before you just upload something onto Amazon. And honestly, I don't think it's enough to just make a good book and throw it out there. I think there are tons of high quality books on Amazon that just don't sell because people don't want them, or because the creator hasn't thought about where their book is going to end up on Amazon or how to market it correctly. So selling on Amazon, in my opinion, is a skill, and you need to be willing to learn that skill to be a successful independent publisher. Okay, so that's it for this video, and like I say, if you're interested even the slightest in this, make sure that you comment below. Like I say, if there's not like 50 plus comments with interest on this, I'm not going to do it. Make sure you comment, and I'll see you in another video whenever.